Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and it is officially NBA Draft Eve. We have ranked our top 14 prospects in this class with our big board. We have asked and answered our biggest questions ahead of the draft, and today we're going to be wrapping up our pre-draft coverage with a mock draft. Just through the lottery, top 14 picks, but Logan, we're going to rotate selections here. You have the number one pick for the Spurs. We all know that they will be taking Victor Wembanyama. So how do you feel about that fit and that situation for Wemby?
Well, going to San Antonio, I really do like the international connection, Carson. He was a fan of the team growing up. He loved the connection with Tony Parker. Obviously had Manu Ginobili, one of the greatest prospect developing teams in NBA history. And I think the most superstar needy team in the league. That's probably why I like this the most. You look around the league and you arguably have at least, one building block or one superstar, one guy that you can point to as maybe the future of every team. I don't really think San Antonio has that. That's why I really do like this fit. And then when you talk about what Wemby does on the floor, we really have never seen anything quite like him, man. He is a freak of nature when compared to really anybody else in league history, man. He's one of the greatest prospects of all time, 7'4", 230 pounds. And you just look at the ease at which he does everything on the floor, man. The effortless shot blocking where he's blocking shots. He doesn't even have to leave the floor, Carson. They're throwing lobs to him, and he's barely leaving the floor, finishing a double clutch dunk at the end of an oop with just utter ease. The ease at which he's able to get these difficult shots off, man. Wemby really makes everything look so much easier because he is a supersized version of any NBA superstar that you point to. Fit-wise, I think it's going to be rough for Wemby, and I think last episode and the episode before that, Carson, I think you did a good job at pointing out things that he needs to improve on, that it's not going to be a seamless. We're not going to see Wemby step right into the league and drop. I don't think we're going to watch him drop 25 points a night, super efficiently or something like that. I think there's going to be a bit of a transition period, and I think you did a great job of laying out things he needs to improve on, the post game, getting more physical, stuff like that, filling out his frame. And so, I don't want to put these overbearing expectations like everybody else has. I think there's always a transition period, and it is a pretty abysmal situation here in San Antonio. So, I want to put that in perspective too. I really do think he can come into the league and average 20 points a game. That's still super impressive for a rookie. I think he could be close to 10 boards a night, right? At like 8 or something like that. But I don't want to put, oh yeah, man, he's going to make the Spurs a playoff contender, immediately. I want to put expectations on that. So this is a pretty bad situation. The Spurs are the most superstar needy team in the league, but I think they deserve it, and I think they're going to do a good job working with this kid and developing him. But I'm super excited. He is the best prospect we have arguably seen since LeBron James, and I can't wait to see him set foot on the court in San Antonio, man.
I don't know that I would say it's a really bad situation. They certainly have a long ways to go, but obviously a very good franchise with, as you mentioned, an incredible player development history with Greg Popovich at the helm, and they do have some legitimately solid young pieces on this roster. They certainly are lacking compared to the rest of the league in terms of that cornerstone young talent. That is, of course, before adding Wemby. Like we talked about during the lottery, some of the dynamic young guards he could have been paired with if Charlotte got lucky and then you have him and LaMelo teaming up, or if it was Detroit with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. The Spurs don't have that kind of guy. I do think if they retain Trey Jones, that is a player who is not flashy, who is not a building block kind of piece, but does control the game very well, establishes the pace, sets up others, and I think therefore could be a nice complementary piece for Wemby early. And then it's really about the wing talent here as their roster is currently constructed. Devin Vassell is a guy who I really like with his shooting and defensive and some playmaking value. I prefer him to Keldon Johnson, even though Keldon has sort of assumed that number one option role, just because I think all the areas that I mentioned, shooting, playmaking, defense, Vassell is better, and neither of these guys are going to be true lead offensive options. So Vassell is the better complementary skill set. And then it's going to be interesting to see how the front court dynamics play out for Wemby, because it's interesting. Early on in his career, you could argue that pairing him in the front court with a Jakob Poeltl, who the Spurs had last year and then traded away midseason, would be ideal, because you have Wemby as this secondary rim protector, and then Poeltl is still this big, sturdy 5 who can protect the hell out of the rim alongside him. That two bigs thing could have been really intriguing. Now, Zach Collins is a serviceable big for them to play him alongside, but I do think we're going to see a lot of Wemby at the 5 from the jump, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. I think that's certainly his long-term position, but we'll see if he's physically ready to hang in that role. Jeremy Sohan, though, I think long-term alongside him in that front court is a very nice defensive piece with his level of versatility and activity and IQ and instincts. So it's going to be interesting. A lot is going to be expected of Wemby immediately on both sides of the ball. I think that he is going to, like from the jump, be expected to be their best defensive and offensive player, which wouldn't necessarily be the case in any location he could end up in. But I think he is such a sensational talent that he is going to thrive anywhere. And then it'll just be a matter of the Spurs continuing to add the right pieces alongside him, because I don't see that other like future star running mate for Wemby on this roster right now. So number 2, there's been a lot of discussion. A lot of people saying that they believe Scoot Henderson is the clear second best prospect, but a lot of word coming out of the Hornets camp that they are leaning towards taking Brandon Miller out of Alabama. I think they should take Miller. I think they will take Miller. We've talked before about what makes Miller so special as a prospect, this incredible shooting ability at 6'9", a really distinct level of advanced ball handling for a player of that size and that age, the tools to be a multi-positional impact defensive player, flashes of playmaking and patience and manipulation of defenders out of pick and roll, the foul drawing ability, all these things that to me give him the look of a star wing who can have a positive impact in so many different areas that his floor is pretty high too. I just think the fit is far more intuitive, and I understand if some people are like, hey, well, I like Scoot more than I like LaMelo's future, so maybe we should prioritize him instead of thinking, how do we build around LaMelo? But given that I think Miller is actually a slightly better prospect than Scoot in a vacuum, that doesn't really hold water with me. And also, although I am very confident in Scoot, LaMelo is already one of the most impressive young guards in the league. But a ball-dominant player, ran the 5th most pick and roll in the league this year. Scoot is not proven enough as a catch-and-shooter and as an off-ball player to make me have any sort of confidence in that fit. So you add Miller to a collection of wings in Charlotte, some of whom are going to be hitting the market potentially, Kelly Oubre, Miles Bridges, and whatnot. Nobody to me who you are prioritizing over him. And again, I do think that he's versatile. Obviously, every team wants to have multiple high-level wings in today's NBA. So I would expect Charlotte to go with Miller at 2.
I don't like the Scoot Henderson pairing either. Like, I don't utterly hate it, but I think people are kind of making a bigger deal about like LaMelo being an off-ball weapon. I really just don't think that fit is seamless as people think. LaMelo's never really proven he can also be an off-ball guy either. I think Miller's the right pick, and I think the Hornets could surprise a lot of people next season, Carson. I think if they bring back I think Kelly Oubre should be brought back just as like a depth guy off the bench. I think you should start Miller immediately, but if they play Mark Williams more next season, man, if Book Knight looks good, like Kai Jones, your guy from a couple drafts ago, like I think there's a lot of young talent that's very intriguing here in Charlotte, and I hope they get some runway to get some burn here next season, man, because I don't know, like I said, man, there's still a lot of talent that I really like in Charlotte, and Brandon Miller would just be another guy that I really like and has a lot of upside. Also, Charlotte desperately needs shooting, was 29th in three-point shooting last season, so I think he's a better prospect. I think it's the right fit, and I think it's the right move. At number 3, we're not going to do any trades in our mock draft. If I was general manager of the Portland Trailblazers, let me tell you, buddy, I'm shipping Damian Lillard right out of town, probably to the Boston Celtics. I'm getting Jaylen Brown. I'm getting a legitimately a legitimately good star to build around for the future. Regardless, no trades involved. The right pick here is Scoot Henderson. Regardless of what you think about him as a floor space or whatever, he's going to be a great rim collapser. I think the comparisons are good. And I don't think they're hyperbolic. John Morant, Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, whatever dominant rim pressuring, super athletic guard that you want to point to, I think Scoot is a good comp for. And I really do think that one day Scoot could be a complete scoring, ball dominant offensive engine, man. Like the ease at which he's able to get to his pull-ups, get to his fadeaways, get to these tough mid-range looks. I think the shot is going to translate, and his mechanics look good. Like his shot looks pure. He's not a bad shooter. The separation that he creates, like I really do think that one day Scoot could be a complete offensive engine and complete offensive guard, not just getting to the rack and collapsing defenses at a high level, where he is a great playmaker, has tremendous feel for the game, feel out of the pick and roll. I really do think he could be a complete off the dribble scorer as well. And so I think if the Portland Trailblazers trade this pick, it is a fundamental misstep and a mistake.
Yeah.
I think the move is to trade Damian Lillard, move on from him, restart your timeline. There's so much young talent here. Like if they move off of Shaedon Sharpe, if they move off of Ant Simons, I think it is a colossal mistake. I think those are guys with a lot of upside, with star upside, who have star traits. And this would just be a really fun timeline to go in on. And I think you can get a lot of young talent, another building block piece with Damian Lillard. I just think it's a mistake if they don't go with Scoot here and they continue to go on this core that's just not there, guys. You can be paying Damian Lillard a lot of money to either make the playoffs and lose in the first round or not even get there. Trade Damian Lillard, get it over with, bite the bullet, restart your franchise, and restart it with a lot of young, fun talent. So I think Scoot Henderson is the right pick here, and I think Portland is foolish if they run it back with Damian Lillard this year.
I agree. And no matter what, if Portland holds on to this pick, they have to take Scoot. I just believe that he is in a different class in terms of talent. I love Amen Thompson, but I agree. I think the separator is both these super athletes with super high playmaking ceilings who I expect to have positive defensive impacts. The distinction is the confidence level I have in their ability to figure the shot out. I think that Scoot is much further along mechanically, more proven as a mid-range jump shooter, and so I just have more faith in him really turning that into a respectable shot at the next level and potentially even a weapon down the line. So you'd have to go with Scoot, and then you are looking at a very crowded backcourt, like Dame, Ant Simons, and Scoot. Those guys don't all work together. They're all primarily on-ball creators. Scoot has the explosiveness as a cutter, but it's just not where you're getting the value that you want out of him, making him your secondary ball handler. He is meant to run the show, be that downhill playmaking engine, and he should be prioritized in that role as the future of any franchise that is lucky enough to get him with the number 3 pick. I agree with you completely. This team is too far away to create some sort of championship window around Damian Lillard. The trades that we see mocked for other stars, if it's talk of Zion, if it's talk of Cat, none of those guys are pushing them over the edge. This roster is too far away defensively. You would be compromising too many important assets to acquire a current star like that. I just think what's likely going to happen is Portland will look at Dame and they'll say, oh man, we tried to move this pick. It didn't work out. And then there's going to be a real crossroads here where maybe Dame is finally fed up and he asks out, because it seems like the Blazers will not move him until he does that. But there seems to be more potential now than ever before for him to do that. At number 4, I think the Rockets have to take Amen Thompson because, again, I think that he is just a superior prospect to anybody else in this class. Legitimately, a one-of-one athlete at 6'7". Well, maybe I shouldn't say that because he has a twin brother who's pretty similar athletically. But those two, I have never seen this combination of quickness in terms of a first step and vertical athleticism that is special. Overall twitchiness. 6'7" dudes just don't move like these guys. And then you consider Amen's incredibly high playmaking ceiling, all the angles that he has at his height, his general unselfishness, impressive vision, can make all sorts of dynamic one-handed passes with velocity, incredibly creative, inventive playmaker, great in transition, awesome tools for the defensive end of the floor and has shown a commitment to that end. To me, you just take him. And yeah, it's weird to insert another flawed player offensively because of his lack of shot, who is coming out of the overtime environment, which obviously is a bit more chaotic and free-flowing. And you think about some of the stuff that Jalen Green has had to work out coming from like his AAU into Ignite background, where he's not always playing the most cohesive, smart basketball. Maybe it'll be a bit of a circus in Houston, but it'll be a very talented circus. And I just think if you tried to pick anybody else, you would be overthinking it. You would be making a mistake. Continue to stockpile these blue chip high-end talents with Green, with Jabari Smith, and now with Amen Thompson, and figure it out from there. Yeah, he doesn't fit super well with Kevin Porter Jr. I understand that they owe Kevin Porter Jr. some money down the line. I really just don't care. Prioritize the best player available, take him, and then you're just looking at them having plus talents in so many different positions, dude. Like Şengün being one of the most skilled offensive centers in the league, period. Tari Eason had such an impressive two-way rookie season. Jae'Sean Tate is a guy who I will always have an affinity for with his playmaking and his defensive grit. So they will be trending in a very positive direction. It's just a question of organizationally, from the coaching staff, Ime Udoka coming in there, can they put all these guys in the best positions to succeed? And I sure hope so, because Amen Thompson is a special talent.
Dude, I think you're exactly right. The biggest thing with the Rockets isn't about talent. It's about time, and it's about culture. And once that comes together, I trust Udoka, man. If Udoka can come in here and get these guys just focused on playing ball and playing hard night to night, I mean, the biggest thing to me is about the defense, right? They were abysmal last year, 29th in defense. I'd also like if they could add shooting. They were 30th in three-point percentage last season. So, you know, Thompson doesn't help with shooting. He certainly helps with defense. But again, like I said, it's about time and developing these guys and getting the culture right, getting them playing winning basketball now, and waiting for a year or two down the line where we can really say these guys are legit contenders. But it starts with adding that talent. I do think you're overthinking it if you don't take Amen Thompson here. And sure, man, I'd slot KPJ to the bench. I know people think he can be like Lefty Harden or something one day. He had 5.7 assists per game to over 3 turnovers per game last season. I think they need a legit table setter. I think that's Amen Thompson, and I'm really excited about the potential of that team and with that pick. So I think it's the right pick. This is where it really gets interesting. With Detroit, I think there's 3 ways you can go here. I'm going to take Cam Whitmore, man. I thought about taking Jarace Walker here. I think there are other spots where Walker fits more, and I just think there's a higher offensive ceiling and complete ceiling with Cam Whitmore. He's still only going to be 19 years old. And I just think about the athletic ceiling that you have with Jaden Ivey, with Cade Cunningham, with Whitmore. There's just a different level of all on-ball creation there, where I think Whitmore one day could be a guy that initiates on the perimeter. He is a freak athlete, over a 40-inch vertical at this height. I mean, he is one of the scariest athletes in this draft. 6'7", 230 pounds, 7-foot wingspan. And all Detroit really needs, I think, are front court pieces. I do think you have building blocks in Cunningham, in Ivy, in Duren. So you're looking for that 3 or the 4. Right now, you've got Beef Stew, or you've got Bogdanovich, Marvin Bagley. You know, I mean, there's some pieces here, but I think Whitmore clears all of those guys, and you can slot him in immediately at the 3 spot, start him from day one. And it's just a fun, young, athletic core, dude. I mean, you let these guys go out and play ball. Whitmore's shot needs to come along. He's a 34% shooter from behind the arc. But again, man, I'm banking on the ceiling on these guys growing together. So again, you know, I don't think it's a seamless winning fit from day one, but it's not like the Pistons are ready right now. These are young guys that need to grow and develop all together. So I'm taking the guy who I think can help them defensively, but has a lot of room to grow, where I think he has star upside with these athletic traits, with the burst off the dribble. Again, he's got a ways to go. His handle needs to get better. He needs to become a better shooter overall, but there's a lot of raw traits to like with Whitmore, and I think he fits this team's timeline. So I'm still going best player available with the highest ceiling. I think that could be Ausar. I think that could be Cam Whitmore. I'm going to take Whitmore here. And again, man, I'm just really excited about the athletic young core that you would have in Detroit with this pick.
I think there's a bunch of directions the Pistons could go that I'd be fine with. I do think Ausar is the best player available at this point, but I don't love the fit. I don't think that he has to be a primary ball handler. I don't think that's his role, but I do think he's probably a secondary ball handler. And just with how established Ivy and Cade already are here, Whitmore to me is a off-ball player, period. He's never going to be an offensive engine. I don't know that his playmaking is going to reach that level. His on-ball creation, a lot of it is just predicated on close-out attacking athleticism. Yeah, he can get to his step back, but really I view him as insane athlete with a high shooting ceiling, and if he can pull everything together, a high defensive ceiling. So I think you're looking to more of the complementary, versatile wing kind of types for Detroit. Jarace Walker would make sense to me. I get that right now with Bojan there, you would be a little bit big in the front court, maybe not as quick as you would like to be, but I don't know that Bojan needs to be a long-term priority for them, although he is very good. I like the Whitmore pick. I think it makes sense. At number 6, I think there's a few ways the Orlando Magic could go, but I am going to have them take the player who I consider the best available at this point, and that is Ausar Thompson. I think that in terms of their wings, Orlando is in a great spot with Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. I think that Wendell Carter Jr. is going to be one of the better fives in the league on an incredible contract. He already is one of the better fives, but he's on a declining contract. It's going to be under $11 million in 2026. And so I also like Markelle Fultz as a initiator right now. I think that his playmaking, his athleticism, his decision-making have turned him into a legit one. And that's not to say that they should pass up on anybody who would potentially be a replacement, because I don't view Fultz as that kind of player where you have to prioritize him. But it would be like Anthony Black, and I just think that Ausar is better than Anthony Black. I think, again, rare athlete, even a slightly better defensive prospect than his brother, a better shooting prospect. He was 36% on spot-up threes, respectable. His mechanics are not as wonky to me, and brings a lot of that same playmaking, rim pressuring, transition value, just slightly more oriented towards off-ball, complementary skill sets. And so I do think he can work alongside a player like Fultz. Yes, it would be great if they could add more shooting, but I think really they want somebody who is dynamic in the backcourt because of how solid their front court foundation is. And so even with some of those shooting flaws, I think Ausar brings so many things to the table that he would be the right pick at 6.
And because they have that second pick here in the lottery too, Carson, I think there's a real chance to add shooting value then too. So I think we go best player available here. And I think it's the right pick, man. This is exactly how my board would have shaken out had I had regardless picks. I know I had Ausar down on my list, but I do think that this pick really works, man. And I like the guard by committee thing they have in Orlando right there. I don't think you have a standout star guard. You have Fultz, you have Suggs, you have Cole Anthony. I think all of them are flawed in their own ways, but I think you're okay with moving forward with all three of those guys as your majority point guards. And again, I think you can slot in Ausar in these lineups as a 2, as a 3. He's going to be a defensive plus from day one. And again, I think this is a better situation for him than others, Carson, because you're not entrusting him as the de facto point guard right away. There are other guys to lean on for ball handling duties. If it's Franz, if it's Paolo, if it's any of the point guards I mentioned, all of those guys can be perimeter initiators, and Ausar can do other stuff while he can also initiate. So I think that's a good pick. With the 7th pick, I think this is a no-brainer. I think you're picking between 2 guys here. The Pacers need a power forward. I think they have every other spot on their board filled up. If Ausar was here, if Whitmore is here, I think that's who you go with. But because those guys are gone, I'm going to take Jarace Walker. Walker has quickly become one of one of my favorite pieces, just because I think he's going to be a plus defensively immediately. This guy with his long wingspan is going to be a great help side rim protector, a great perimeter guy too. Like, he's just a defensive playmaker, really active hands, looking to make plays, looking to push in transition. And then offensively, was one of the highest ranking guys in terms of roll man efficiency. I believe over 90th percentile, but limited touches. That's what's really intriguing to me, because in Houston, they didn't run a lot of pick and roll. I think that's where Jarace Walker is going to shine as a rumbling big man to the basket, dealing with contact well and finishing through there. Has really nice touch for a big man. Has great bounce, and one day I think could be a great pick and popper, but here can just thrive off ball, man. Running a lot of pick and roll with Halliburton, spacing the floor. You've got some great athletes here in Benedict Mathurin now with Walker, but again, I think this is a team that needs defense. They were 26th in defensive rating last year. Walker will be a defensive plus immediately. He's got a lot of upside offensively, so I think he fits their timeline. I think he helps them defensively immediately, and I think he's probably the best prospect available, man. I think he ticks a lot of boxes, but the biggest thing here is he provides a ton of off-ball value offensively, and that's what you need here in Indiana when the ball is going to be in Tyrese Halliburton's hands so much. So this is honestly one of my favorite fits in the draft, Carson.
Agreed completely. I really like Taylor Hendricks too, and I would consider him here, but I do slightly prefer Walker as a prospect, and I think you said it checks off a bunch of needs for this team, adding another quality piece in that front court to begin with, and then the roles that he can fill. They don't need another guy who's going to try to be a primary creator. Even an Anthony Black, who I really like. Halliburton controls the game really well. He genuinely enhances everybody around him. You already have Benedict Mathurin there as a dynamic young scoring piece. So give me the all-around value of Walker, the defensive versatility, the physical tools, athleticism, strength, the playmaking instincts that he's shown, and the offensive versatility. Like you mentioned, the pick and roll game. I want to see him more aggressive, consistently getting downhill there. It was a lot of pick and pop for him when he was involved in those actions at Houston, but he is a guy who you view as a capable shooter with the potential to grow a bit more there. And I do think that there's some on-ball creation stuff with him. His handle, his quickness is impressive for being basically 250 pounds. So that's a guy who I am confident in having this multifaceted impact and who does have some star upside as well. I think he makes a lot of sense in Indiana. So at number 8, I think the Washington Wizards would be walking into a real dream scenario here, Logan. And honestly, I think our mock has been very complimentary, very favorable for every team. I don't think anybody would be unhappy with these outcomes. I think they would have to take Anthony Black. They are in a position organizationally where they have not been able to land that foundational piece, period, in terms of young talent. Now with Bradley Beal gone, I think you want a lead ball handler, offensive creator, somebody with real star upside who is exciting, somebody you can build around. And I think that that's Anthony Black, on top of him being probably, well, he's actually not my favorite prospect on the board in a vacuum. I would slightly lean Taylor Hendricks, but I think situationally it makes so much more sense to try to land that cornerstone guard. You're talking about an extremely natural ball handler at 6'7", high-level playmaking instincts, guy who sees over the defense, has tons of passing angles available to him at that height. I think is a real dog with great athletic, physical tools defensively, should be a positive impact guy there. And then needs to improve as a shooter, but is not concerningly bad there to where I look at it as a guaranteed liability at the next level. So I think when you consider that two-way value, playmaking value, his ability to work his way into the lane and play off ball some, okay catch and shooter, good athlete attacking closeouts, I would take Anthony Black.
Yeah, I don't think the Wizards are in a position to not take the best available prospect. And I also might like Taylor Hendricks a little more, but again, he's a complimentary guy. I don't think you're looking for a complimentary guy. You're looking for a lead guy. The Wizards utterly confused me. I don't know. I've heard reports that are not in a rush to buy out Chris Paul. I still think that's going to happen. I don't really see him suiting up for DC. Kuzma's out of town. We are now hearing reports that Kristaps Porzingis is interested in signing and trading with them. So we really could look at a full overhaul for them. But Anthony Black, I think, is a two-way stud, man. I think that's the right pick, too. Oh, buddy, but my favorite pick of the draft, it might be this next one. I am utterly salivating at this. If this happens, I am going to do a jig, probably live on our broadcast, Carson. We're going live to tomorrow during the lottery for the draft. If the Jazz get Cason Wallace, man, I'm going to be so happy, dude. I think it is a dream pick. I think it is a match made in heaven, dude. I just think about all the 5 out that Utah runs, all the open floor that Cason would have to operate with the Lauri Markkanens of the world, man, with the Kelly Olynyk's, the Clarkson and Sexton off ball to get buckets. And I think they need a point guard, right? They trade away Mike Conley last season to the Timberwolves. And so I think they really need a point guard. I just see him thriving with all the pick and roll that you would have here, all the space. He's such a veteran decision maker. He has veteran instincts, loves to relocate off ball, can just work in the flow of an offense. Like, I don't really think Utah needs like a superstar ball dominant guy to win games. I think they need a guy who can make veteran decisions and get the offense in motion. And I just love the fit, man. He's also a defensive stud. Like, I think he's going to be a really good point of attack defender. So, oh my gosh, like this would be a dream scenario, I think, for Utah, man. The 5 out, the spacing. Wallace is just a guy that I think can fit in a system that works right now. He's just got veteran feel already as a rookie, man. This is my dream scenario. This is my favorite pick, man. I think if the Jazz get Cason Wallace, they are going to be a great offense immediately. So this is my favorite pick in the draft, man. I utterly love Cason, and I think this can be a winning situation offensively from day one.
I like it, and they don't really have that sort of foundational guard piece on the roster right now. Sexton, Clarkson obviously have their positive traits, the things that you get excited about, but certainly not in the same way that Cason Wallace does, where he's a guy who you really trust to run your offense, to make great decisions, to make everybody around him better, to also have that two-way impact. Consistent shooter of the basketball, great floater touch. I do not think he is the best player available, but I do like the fit in Utah, and so I can't really criticize this, especially because of how ideal it would be for the Dallas Mavericks, who I'm picking for here. And I'm worried about how things shake out for the Mavericks, if I'm honest, because if Taylor Hendricks is not there, then I think the two-way wing front court talent in this late lottery range is not great. I really like Gradey Dick. I don't think he's a plus defender. He's not a bigger wing. And those are the kind of things that Dallas is going to need. That's exactly what Taylor Hendricks would provide. I've seen a lot of people talking about Dallas taking Derek Lively the second here, because people look at that 5 spot as a need, which it definitely is, especially with Christian Wood probably going to walk. He wasn't good enough defensively anyways. But I just think Lively is not in this class as a prospect. I think he is too far away right now. Like, yeah, he can do the simple big man stuff, roll to the rim, finish reasonably well. I think protect the rim, although there's still some refining there in terms of tendencies to foul and whatnot. But those two simple yet important traits for 5s, he can do well. But right off the bat, I don't know. I just think a guy like Taylor Hendricks is bringing a totally different level of impact, a highly versatile defensive piece in your front court, really good secondary rim protector, really good rebounder, who is an awesome complementary piece offensively, great shooter, a guy who can attack mismatches out of the post, a solid closeout attacker and finisher, but just a dude who can get buckets efficiently in multiple different ways, who is not going to demand a ton of time handling the ball, dictating the offense himself. Awesome pick and pop option for me alongside Kyrie and Luka. Great at covering for some of their defensive issues at the point of attack on the back line. That would be a home run for them in my eyes.
100%. I think that's the right pick. And like you said, dude, I really hope he's available because Derek Lively the second, I think, really is far away in terms of just polish and playing, again, winning basketball right now. I think Hendricks can do that from day one. 39% from deep on nearly 5 attempts a game, 6'10 with a 7'2 wingspan. Like, Hendricks ran small ball 5 in high school, man. Like, I think that's something that Dallas could explore too if he's an exceptional shot blocker. But I think he'd be a winning asset for them immediately. And I cross my fingers for Dallas keeping Luka Doncic for playing winning basketball next season that he's available, because there is a steep drop off, man. You're looking at probably Gradey Dick or Bilal Coulibaly. But with the 11th pick, I think the Orlando Magic need shooting. And I think Gradey Dick is a perfect fit here. If you think that the guys here have star upside, the guards, that being Keyonte George, Kobe Bufkin, maybe you take them over a Gradey Dick here. But again, man, I don't hate the point guard by committee setup that Orlando has right now. And I think they desperately need wing shooting to open up the floor for Banchero, for Wagner, for all these other guys. So I think Dick is the no-brainer fit, man. And again, he's just a perfect complementary role player. No, he's not a great defender, but he's going to space the floor really effectively, and he is going to be a lights-out shooter. He's a great catch and shooter. He's a great off-ball relocator. He makes good decisions within the flow of the offense. He's got upside as a pick-and-roll ball handler and playmaker. You know, not a primary guy, but a secondary or tertiary guy. And then in terms of shooting when he gets the ball, man, I just really love his overall craftiness. He's not going to explode by guys in the lane, but he's crafty enough to get his shot off there. And then the way when he attacks closeouts, the way he uses ball fakes, jab steps, head fakes, all that stuff, and turns that into easy one dribble pull up, stuff like that. Grady's really good at doing that, and he's a really good shooter of the basketball. So again, he's not a superstar, but I think he's a really good role player and a really good shooter from day one. And Orlando needs the floor spacing. So I think it's honestly a match made in heaven here at 11. And I think it's a steal because he's a really, really good prospect.
Well, we've had a lot of ideal outcomes for teams so far. I think this would be yet another one for Orlando. In fact, this is exactly what I laid out as their ideal game plan in our last episode. Ausar Thompson at 6 and Gradey Dick at 11. The Magic are just in a spot where I don't think they're going to have a bunch of glaring needs and should pretty much be in best player available mode. I think that Gradey Dick is the best prospect available at this point, and I think that his shooting value and versatility, his playmaking and ability to have some chops as a secondary ball handler, his all-around competitiveness, IQ, just makes him the kind of guy who really fits and should help any situation, especially Orlando does, as you mentioned, maybe need a little bit of that shooting influx. One of the best shooters in the class. I think even if he's not the highest ceiling guy, he's one of the highest floor guys, and that makes a lot of sense for Orlando to try to add. Another team that doesn't have a ton of clear needs is the Oklahoma City Thunder at 12, Logan, who are in a really interesting spot because of how much draft capital and resources they've expended on young players at basically every position in recent years. So I think they should be in best player available mode as well. And to me, at this point, that is Keyonte George, who I think you look at this roster and say, is there room for a lot of extra creation? Maybe there's not a ton when you consider that you've already got SGA and Giddey and Jalen Williams. But I think Keyonte is a guy who is going to have value in the best case scenario beyond just his straight up scoring ability on ball. I think he projects very well as a catch and shooter. I think he is going to be a plus playmaker. He makes too many mistakes there right now, but he has the vision. He has the upside. Defensively is a guy who I think is going to compete and at the very least be respectable on that end of the floor. So maybe Kobe Bufkin could make a little bit more sense in terms of fit just because maybe you like his defensive impact a little bit more. I'm not sure that the difference there is convincing enough to pass up on the guy who I think has the higher offensive ceiling because of how advanced his perimeter shot creation, shooting skill, playmaking upside is. I do think he's a gamble. We've talked about it before, not a consistent scorer inside the arc, not a great job of getting all the way into that painted area consistently yet, but I like him the most. And I honestly think that that's pretty much what OKC should be making their decisions on at this point, because you got talent everywhere. It's going to be a bit of a logjam no matter what position. Maybe you could look at like those sort of bigger athletic two-way wings and say Bilal Coulibaly would make sense. I think he's a bit raw still, and I do think he's a lottery talent, but I view George as a better prospect. And it's like, you don't know what Ousmane Dieng is going to be, right? And that's another bigger wing. It's just, they should take the best player available to me. I think that's Keyonte George.
Man, dude, that messed me up. I had mocked Keyonte to Toronto with this next pick. I really liked the fit there. I thought they would need another guard, potentially losing Van Vliet, losing potentially Gary Trent Jr. as well. And I really liked his shooting because that's exactly what Toronto needs. They were 28th in three-point makes and percentage last season. So I mocked Coulibaly. I thought that made a little more sense. It kind of leans in with what the Thunder have been doing in the past by just kind of going out and getting the rawest guy with the most upside. But I don't hate the pick. I like Keyonte George a lot, man. I think he's got star, shot maker upside. So I think it's a good pick. You're right, though, man. It's going to be a logjam wherever they go. So this is tough, man. I am between two players, or three, honestly. I'll throw them out there to you. It's Kobe Bufkin, Nick Smith Jr., and Jalen Hood-Schifino. I'm just going to take the best guy available out of all those guys. I think Hood-Schifino is probably more of a primary ball handler immediately, right? Has more of those playmaking point guard chops. I think Nick Smith Jr. and Bufkin are probably in similar roles off the bat, but I like Bufkin the most, so I'll go with Bufkin here at 13 to the Raptors. I think they need a guard, desperately need floor spacing. Bufkin's one of the most versatile scorers in the draft, man. You look at his percentiles from basically every action, man. He's plus in spot ups, transition, off-ball screens, DHOs, and as a pick-and-roll ball handler. He's super crafty in the lane, man. Just slithers through the lane, man. Finds space, finds a way to get to buckets. He's super crafty. Shot 49% on long twos. Shot 73% at the rim. He's just a bucket getter. So, I question if he's a superstar because I don't know if he's got, super playmaking chops, right? I think he can be a good playmaker. I don't know if he's going to be a great one, right? He made some tough passes to the corner, those skip passes, those whips. So I think he's got upside there, but he's a bucket getter from day one, and he's a decent defender. So I think the Raptors should just be taking best player available, but I do think they have a desperate need for a guard. So
yeah.
I thought Bufkin was going to be a guy off the bench immediately. If he goes to Toronto, I think he could honestly start, man. Like, Toronto needs guard play. And I like Bufkin a lot. So I wasn't projecting him to go there. I had Keyonte, but I'll take Kobe and I'll be very happy with it, man. I really like him as a prospect.
I think that makes sense. I think Toronto absolutely needs more high-level offensive half-court skill. We have seen that plague them. And I think Bufkin is a really good all-around offensive prospect. So now we have the Pelicans at 14, dude. And honestly, I am a little bit stumped here. I'll walk you through the options that I would consider too. I think Hood-Schifino is now the best, sort of lead playmaking guard. I think he's not a guy who necessarily has to dictate your entire offense, but isn't the most proven as an off-ball player right now, who's only 25.5% on spot-up threes last year, really significantly better as a pull-up shooter right now, especially from that mid-range. But there's a ceiling there with his size and his playmaking and whatnot. Honestly, I might consider Jordan Hawkins just for his pure immediate shooting value. Derek Lively II, I don't think is this caliber of talent, but if you just look at the big situation overall, that's an area that New Orleans could look to bring in a little bit more talent. Coulibaly is the number 14 prospect on my big board, but the two-way wing situation in New Orleans, theoretically, you can never really have enough, but Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, pretty darn good tandem. And then you have obviously BI in that mix in terms of the collection of wings. Yeah, I'm kind of stumped here, dude. There are some other guys deeper down who I really like. Leonard Miller is a guy who I think has a lot of intriguing upside with his athleticism and two-way ceiling and flashes of the higher level of offensive skill. Chris Murray is a dude who I'm just super confident in having a positive impact, two-way guy, versatile offensive player. I'm just trying to talk through all the options because I don't know where they should go. I guess I'll go with Coulibaly because I think he's the best player available. I do think that it's valuable to continue to add those wings. My concern there is that the Pelicans want to be a playoff team. He is raw. And I really considered Hood Schifino long and hard here. That role as a bench creator may be available for him. I think they would like to see Dyson Daniels fill that, though. So I'll just have them take Wemby's buddy, Coulibaly. That's a tough one, though, man. I'll tell you what, every other pick I felt like, oh, how seamless, how ideal. That's a tricky one.
Yeah, I also struggled with that one when I was mocking this up. I mocked Hood Schifino or Derek Lively the second, but you make some great points. Lively the second is, again, man, like long term, like, yeah, I like him, but I don't even know if he's playable like from day one.
Yeah.
And then I'd probably go with Hood Schifino, but I do think they want to see Dyson Daniels slide into that backup playmaker off the bench. I'd probably go with Hood Schifino, but it's really close, man. And I don't think there's like a dire, drastic need immediately. And this is not a deep big class, man. Like you're looking at Lively the second, James Najee, and then I guess Sonogo, the next big man, like off the board. Like I might think that Sonogo as a early second round, late first round guy is the most playable big man immediately. That's kind of scary to think about. So I really don't like the big situation in this class. I think New Orleans is not only one of the toughest teams in the lottery to mock out, but one of the toughest teams in the whole draft, man. I think they could go a myriad of different ways. And maybe not just a playmaker off the bench, Carson, but like if a Bufkin's here, maybe a scorer off the bench. I really think that New Orleans could go anywhere with this pick, man.
Yeah. The toughest thing I think about the Coulibaly pick for them is just a question of timeline, right? One of the youngest, rawest players in this tier. So I don't love that for them necessarily, but then I question if a Murray or a Hawkins, who is a better fit, would be a bit of a reach. Bottom line, I think you could justify any of those, and I don't want to put myself in mental prison here by continuing to overthink it, so I'll stick with what I mocked for them. Lively does make a lot of sense in terms of fit, but I do feel like it's a bit of a reach. I do feel like we talked about last episode, some of the areas where he still just sort of has that like deer in the headlights, really underdeveloped feel to him in traffic, passing up good looks, not developed in terms of the offensive skill categories, post-game shooting at this point. Just not a guy who I would be super eager to like throw into a win now scenario. But he may be just because of the lack of quality big prospects in this class. So there you have it, guys. Our lottery mock, as Logan mentioned earlier, we are going to be back during the draft itself at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, live with Colin Cowherd and Jason Timpf. So we are super excited for that. Those guys will be with us in the early portion of the draft, and then we'll hold down the fort through the rest of the lottery. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this one, then you can subscribe to the Volume YouTube page, catch all of our shows there. You can also listen across all audio platforms. You can follow us across social media, Instagram and TikTok at NerdSesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh. You can join our Discord at the link tree across our social media bios. Just talk basketball, football with us whenever you want. And you can buy our merch. We've got hats, we've got NerdSesh flags, we've got shirts, we've got hoodies. Really sweet stuff that we're super excited about. And if you actually sign up for the volume newsletter right now, you will have access to a special discount code in the Thursday morning edition in your email for some Nerd Sesh merch this week. So, as always, appreciate you guys. Very excited for the draft. Hope you are too. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.